So I love holidays, I love the holiday season, but what if there is holidays that we are celebrating that we actually are not supposed to? Now you may say, well, that's just Halloween or that's Easter because we're giving out candy and, America is overweight and they're diabetic or etc. Has nothing to do with that actually, although that might be maybe a good point. What I'm actually saying is that Dr. Carl Jung, a famous psychiatrist, actually tells us that there are holidays that we're promoting that actually are causing a lot of the problems we see in today's world. And the reason why I say that is because you have things like Veterans Day, which is that really a holiday? Is it a celebration day? What is it? Why should we celebrate some people who go to war if we don't like war? And through the lens of psychology, he really helps us understand, wait, this is actually only reinforcing the systems that create war. It's not actually helping us get out of war. If anything, it continues it. And he tells us a lot of other very powerful revelatory truths that most people probably today wouldn't even talk about. But yet, this is his final book, The Undiscovered Self, before his death. And so I think it's something that everybody should be aware of, which is why I'm making this video. And we're going into detail about the government and how it relates to religion, because often a lot of holidays have formed essentially out of religion, and you can go to Easter and you can even find religion there, or even with Halloween. So then we have Veterans Day and we have the 4th of July, and every country celebrates different holidays according to the state, and then the state claims that it has authority higher than the church. Well, this might have a lot of problems psychology wise that we aren't paying attention to. So in this video, we continue exploring the insights of Dr. Carl Jung about the nature of the state, the dangers of government, and the role of religion as found in his book, The Undiscovered Self. Last week, we explored Dr. Jung's explanation of the power of religion to defy the authority of the government and how religious conviction empowers the believer to resist intellectual, moral, and political domination by the government. In this article, we will build on these insights by studying what Dr. Jung says happens when the state does replace faith in the role of individuals and becomes the determiner of what is good, moral, and just. Quote, "The state has taken the place of God. That is why, seen from this angle, the socialist dictatorships are religions, and state slavery is a form of worship. But the religious function cannot be dislocated and falsified in this way without giving rise to secret doubts, which are immediately repressed so as to avoid conflict with the prevailing trend toward mass-mindedness. The result, as always in such cases, is overcompensation in the form of fanaticism, which in its turn is used as a weapon for stamping out the least flicker of opposition. Free opinion is stifled and moral decision ruthlessly suppressed on the plea that the end justifies the means, even the vilest. The policy of the state is exalted to a creed. The leader or party boss becomes a demigod beyond good and evil, and his votaries are honored as heroes, martyrs, apostles, missionaries. There is only one truth, and beside it no other. It is sacrosanct and above criticism. Anyone who thinks differently is a heretic, who, as we know from history, is threatened with all manner of unpleasant things. Only the party boss who knows the political power in his hands can interpret the state doctrine authentically, and he does so just as suits him." So that's a quote from The Undiscovered Self on page 17. So here, Dr. Jung gives an excellent comprehensive explanation of how the state is essentially religious in nature and function. A society that abandons the worship of God or the gods and becomes secularized only ends up worshiping the government. I would only add that the state is the worst aspects of religion all consolidated into one system. Its adherents are zealous fanatics, and the mere questioning of its dogmas will earn you vicious attacks from pretty much all sides. Whereas most religions will allow you to leave in peace, every form of the state will cage and or kill you for your apostasy, which it labels treason. So the state is a totalizing faith, a totalitarian faith, in that it dictates every aspect of human life, and any rebelling against it is liable to be met with violence and even death. It demands the utmost obedience to the edicts of its leaders, no matter how immoral, scurrilous, dehumanizing, or stupid. Just consider how crossing the road at any place other than where it gives you permission to cross can result in hundreds of dollars in fines. $500 is a huge fine when your average paycheck is between $900 and $1,000. Jail time if you cannot pay, even imprisonment or death if you resist. It's absurd. So this cult of the state allows for no private interpretation of its dogmas or its laws. If you try and argue that the law is wrong or their interpretation is corrupt, they will still rob you, fine you, kidnap you, arrest you, cage you, imprison you, and kill you if you don't submit. Only those who are members of its exalted positions can interpret its edicts, even though they are men like you and me. But they are not just ordinary men, according to the cult of the state, because their position gives them power and apparently the wisdom to manage the lives of hundreds of millions, whereas normal men barely have the wisdom to manage their own lives and certainly no others. And Tolkien said this himself as well, the writer of The Lord of the Rings. So the state also has its own religious rituals, but whereas the rituals of religion can empower people, the rituals of the state destroy the individual. As Dr. Jung explains here, quote, "The performance of a magical action gives the person concerned a feeling of security which is absolutely essential for carrying out a decision, because a decision is inevitably somewhat one-sided and is therefore rightly felt to be a risk. Even a dictator thinks it's necessary not only to accompany his acts of state with threats, but to stage them with all manner of solemnities. Brass bands, flags, banners, parades, and monster demonstrations are no different in principle from ecclesiastical processions, cannonades, and fireworks to scare off demons. Only the suggestive parade of state power engenders a collective feeling of security, which, unlike religious demonstrations, gives the individual no protection against his inner demonism. Hence, he will cling all the more to the power of the state, i.e., to the mass, thus delivering himself up to it psychically as well as morally, and putting the finishing touch to his social dispotentiation. The state, like the church, demands enthusiasm, self-sacrifice, and love, and if religion requires or presupposes the fear of God, then the dictator's state takes good care to provide the necessary terror." That's again from page 17 of the Undiscovered Self. So, in summary, the cult of the state is the most tyrannical, oppressive, and destructive religion of all. Its pledges, anthems, parades, and holidays are all designed to degrade the individual, to make him feel joy and fulfillment as he is subsumed into the indiscriminate whole as a member of the nation, as an American, as a Frenchman, as an Algerian, as a Cambodian, etc. The doctrines of the cult of the state demand sacrifice, human sacrifice, through law enforcement and war, as well as subservience and obedience. Those who refuse to make the proper offerings will have their lives destroyed and everything taken from them, as they are fined, imprisoned, and killed for their disobedience. The fear of this will keep the recalcitrant in line while the rest obey out of adoration. The goal is the very destruction of the individual. Now, we have a whole series on this, okay, so I'll have that linked in the description below. I recommend checking it out because there's a lot of context to this, what we're talking about. You know, Carl Jung talks a lot about psychology in his book, a lot about religion too in this sense, and really just challenging the power of collectivism and statism. Now, most people never heard of statism. You may have heard of collectivism, but statism is really the problem because people can come together voluntarily as they do for pretty much a lot of things in society. And there's no problem with that, right? I mean, there's no harm being done. People come together to do something. But in the case of statism, it's very different, because you have a bunch of people basically saying, I'm just going to follow orders because this person has this authority, has this role and position, and therefore he has more rights than me. Therefore he can commit immoral actions, and he can tell me to jump off a bridge to bring these people to a concentration camp, and that's perfectly fine because he's an authority figure. So I'm going to put some questions on the screen for you, and that might sound silly, but that's because it is. But yet most people do believe in this. We're actually trained into this at a very young age in the public schooling system. And it's no surprise that that same schooling system has been designed by people who want to prevent free will and individual thought. The individual is seen as merely a statistic, as we talked about in previous videos, and not really seen to have any value for themselves. Well, I'm saying you are very valuable, and that's why you deserve to be free. Thank you very much for watching. Check it out. We also had a Freedom Games show that I hosted, and John Pernil Chidester was the winner. You can check out his channel as well. He has a lot of great videos, puts a lot of time and effort into his editing, so be sure to check it out. Okay, go to theliberator.us, that's theliberator.us, and you can send us your article. I'll turn it into a video for you. The article I read today and did a little analysis over was William H. Douglas. His website is thelatterdayLiberator.com. That's thelatterdayLiberator.com. Thank you very much for watching. Take care.